From the first moments that I walked on the Episcopal Day School campus, almost exactly a year ago, I felt something special. I felt oddly at ease and comfortable. At least oddly comfortable while being in a completely unnamed known place doing a 2-day-long job interview. As the days unfolded, after proudly and joyfully I was named head of school later in the fall, I came to understand better my comfort. And it makes me think an awful lot about the song we heard this morning. God, you created the beauty in the world, you put the stars and the moon in the sky, and the birds in the air, the cows and the horses in the fields, and the fish in the sea. The story I'm going to share with you gives me confidence that God created the beauty in the world that led me to Episcopal Day School. Here's the relatively short version of the story. On the very day that the announcement about my being named head of school went out to the public, in fact, within an hour of that, my husband, Mr. Grieve, was at a tiny little cabin, a cabin that's been in my family for more than 100 years. He was there oddly in October for the rather dramatic reason that he was overseeing our cabin being rebuilt because a massive redwood tree had fallen inches from our cabin and done massive damage. I'll show you pictures sometime, they're rather dramatic. To help the construction workers, Mr. Grieve moved a box, one that probably hadn't been moved in decades. In it were journals that my mom had written a long, long time ago. He pulled one out just out of curiosity and randomly opened to a page and came across the following passage, stated May 22nd, 1992. It's a really long time ago. Picked up Ashley, it says, my sister, at SFO, the airport, and drove to San Mateo to see St. Matthew. What in the world? That is so weird. Why would my sister and my mother have gone to San Mateo to see this very church where we sit right now? In this city that had nothing to do with our family. And why did this pop up in our lives at that moment, within an hour of my being announced head of school? So very strange. Being a good researcher, Mr. Grieve set out to try to figure it out. We put some dots together in our minds, remembering that my family, with deep ties to the Episcopal Church, had lived in Burlingame, just down the road a bit, for a short while, and then some light bulbs started to go off in our minds, which led to more research. How surprised were we when we came across the following newspaper article from June 21st, 1913. I have a copy of it in my office. 110 years ago. The headline, San Mateo pastor be ordained today, second event of its kind in the city. And the article, interior decorations in the Episcopal Church of St. Matthew have been completed, and everything is in its readiness for the special ordination services tomorrow, when the Reverend Ross Turman, who happens to be my great-grandfather, will be elevated to the priesthood. Well, that was a surprise. My great-grandfather was ordained, became a priest in this very church, and I had no idea. There's more. Another family journal from many decades later has the following sentence. It's written in July 1950. When my mother was 11 years old, her family, quote, moved back to San Mateo and attended St. Matthew's. And her father was, quote, active in the church where his dad, Ross, had served as deacon and priest. So to get this straight, my grandfather and my great-grandfather were deeply involved in this church, and my mother, who passed away 20 years ago, attended church here. And I had no idea. As I began, this story gives me confidence that God created the beauty in the world that led me to Episcopal Day School. But don't get me wrong. My point here is not that one is always put in what feels like exactly the right place at exactly the right time. If only it were so easy. On my journey, there have been many, many twists and turns, moments when things felt really not quite right, when my path wasn't going in the direction I necessarily wanted or intended. There were unwanted cross-country moves, driven not by me, but by others in my family. There were times when I made really hard decisions, and wonderful decisions, like to step away from my career for a while and stay home with my 3 small children. There were jobs I really wanted to pursue, but didn't, because it didn't make sense for my family. I could go on and on. I see more clearly now that all of this complication, all of those times of hardship, were in fact a part of the beauty in the world that led me to this moment in my life. Beauty that didn't always look like beauty at all. But this rather extraordinary real-life story, in the most unlikely way, made possible by one of the hardest moments in my life, a redwood tree falling on our beloved family cabin. And only because of that did I learn of this rather extraordinary connection my family has to this church where we are right now. So, like the stars and the moon in the sky, and the birds in the air, and cows and horses in the fields, and the fish in the sea, despite what may not look like beauty in our lives at all, we will be where we are meant to be.